Close your eyes for a moment. Think about something you deeply believe, a value you hold, an opinion you defend, a story you tell yourself about who you are and what you deserve. Now ask yourself one question. Where did that thought come from? Not the feeling attached to it, not the certainty behind it. The thought itself, its origin, its author, its source. Because here is something most people will never spend a single minute of their lives considering. The overwhelming majority of thoughts you believe are yours were never generated by you at all. They were handed to you, installed quietly, absorbed without permission. And your mind, extraordinarily efficient, deeply loyal to familiarity, filed them under self. There is a deeply comforting human belief that our inner world is our own, a private, sovereign space where we are the author. Neuroscience and psychology, however, tell a far more complicated story. Research in cognitive development confirms that the human brain, particularly between ages 0 and 7, operates in a near-hypnotic, hyper-absorptive state. During this critical window, the mind is not filtering. It is not evaluating. It is simply recording. Every repeated phrase from a parent, every emotional reaction from a caregiver, every cultural message embedded in television, religion, classroom, and community, all of it goes in, raw, unquestioned, deep. And here is the extraordinary part. Those recordings do not stay in the past. They become the voice you hear when you look in the mirror. They become the instinct that fires before logic arrives. They become the invisible ceiling that tells you how far you are allowed to go, before you have even tried. You did not choose your first language. You did not select your earliest beliefs about money, worthiness, safety, or love. You did not pick the cultural lens through which you interpret every experience you have ever had. These were chosen for you by people who themselves never questioned whether their own thoughts were truly theirs. This is not about blame. This is about precision. Think about the voice that tells you that you are not smart enough, not ready yet, not the kind of person who does that. Think about the automatic assumption you make when someone of a certain background walks into a room. Think about the definition of success you have been quietly, relentlessly chasing, and ask yourself honestly, did I choose this? Or did someone choose it for me? The invisible architects of your inner world are everywhere. Media that repeats what fear sells. Social environments that reward conformity and punish deviation. Systems designed to produce predictable, manageable people. None of this required your consent. It only required your exposure. The reason this is so difficult to see is not a lack of intelligence. It is a feature of the human mind itself. Psychologists refer to this as the ownership effect of cognition, the tendency to experience any thought that arises within our own consciousness as self-generated and therefore valid. The mind does not attach a source label to incoming beliefs. It processes, stores, and eventually presents them as conclusions you arrived at yourself. The ego invested deeply in the idea of a coherent, autonomous self does the rest of the work, defending these borrowed thoughts as though they were hard-won personal truths. This is why people argue passionately for beliefs they have never examined. This is why change feels like loss, even when what is being lost was never truly yours. This is why the most dangerous limitations are not the ones imposed from outside, but the ones you have already internalized so completely that they feel like personality. You are living inside a mental architecture you did not design, built from materials you did not choose, by hands you cannot remember. That is not a tragedy. That is a starting point. Because the moment you ask, whose voice is this, really? Something fundamental shifts. The mind that was once a recording begins, for the first time, to listen to itself. There is a specific kind of silence that arrives when a person first realizes they have been living inside someone else's script. It is not comfortable. It is not immediately liberating. It feels at first like standing in a room you have lived in your entire life, and suddenly noticing that none of the furniture is yours. The paintings on the walls, the books on the shelves, the voice coming from the next room, none of it chosen. All of it familiar. And familiarity, for the human mind, has always been the most convincing disguise that truth has ever worn. But here is what that silence actually is, beneath the discomfort. It is the first moment of real consciousness you have ever had. Most people spend their lives building on top of their foundations, without ever once going beneath them. They add achievements, relationships, opinions, and identities, layer upon layer, never asking what the ground underneath actually consists of or whether it was ever solid to begin with. Reclaiming your mind is not a self-help exercise. It is an act of archaeology. It requires you to go down before you go forward, to excavate the beliefs that were cemented before you had the language to question them, to hold each one up to the light, not with anger, not with the intention to destroy, but with the calm, unflinching eye of someone who has decided that an examined life is the only life worth building. The question is never simply, is this thought negative? Negative thoughts can be entirely your own. The question is far more precise. Does this thought belong to the person I am choosing to become? Or does it belong to the person others decided I should be? That distinction is everything. Here is something the modern world will not tell you, because stillness does not sell anything. The quality of your thinking is inseparable from the quality of what you allow into your mind. Not occasionally. Not when it is convenient. Constantly. Every piece of media consumed. Every conversation entertained. Every environment you sit inside long enough. All of it is writing code into the operating system of your cognition. This means that reclaiming your mind is not a single dramatic decision. It is a daily, almost invisible discipline. It is the book chosen over the scroll, the silence chosen over the noise, the difficult conversation chosen over the comfortable agreement, the deliberate solitude in which, for perhaps the first time, you can hear your own thoughts clearly enough to evaluate whether they are actually worth keeping. You do not find your authentic mind by searching loudly. You find it by making the inner world quiet enough for something genuine to finally surface. Perhaps the most radical idea in all of this is also the simplest. You are not your history. You are not the accumulated opinions of everyone who ever spoke into your life during a moment when you were too young, too trusting, or too afraid to push back. You are not the ceiling someone else imagined for you. You are not the definition of success that was handed down like inherited furniture. Functional, perhaps, but never truly chosen. Identity, at its deepest level, is not something you discover. It is something you construct, deliberately, repeatedly, and with full awareness of what you are choosing to build with. Every thought you consciously examine and either keep or release is an act of authorship. Every time you pause before reacting and ask, "Is this mine?" you are doing something quietly revolutionary. You are pulling the pen out of someone else's hand and beginning, for the first time, to write. So here is where we leave you, not with an answer, not with a formula, but with the one thing more powerful than any conclusion, a question. If you woke up tomorrow and every belief that was given to you, every fear installed before you could speak, every limitation handed down before you could think, every definition of enough that was never yours to begin with, if all of it were simply gone, who would you be? Not who you were told to be, not who circumstance shaped without your permission, not the version of you that exists to meet someone else's expectations. Who would you actually finally choose to be? Sit with that, because the person who can answer that question clearly, without hesitation, without borrowed voices crowding in, that person is not who you were. That is who you are becoming.